Let's talk about CSS. I would like to play around with CSS positioning to see how elements play when they are displayed alongside other elements. So let's do a very simple example. So I'm going to create a new box, and I'm going to call it the class name item. So inside of the item, I just have text. This is the item. So how can I change the styles of the item on the CSS? Yes? How do we do the class thing here? Dot item. Correct. So we got dot item, and if we have dot item, we can of course change the background color. We can add some padding. We can set the width, height, whatever, right? And then we got the box on the right hand side. Yep, something like that. Right, so after the item, I'm going to add an overlay. So that should sound familiar to you, right? This is conflicts. Class name equals overlay, and inside of the overlay, this is the overlay. So I'll do the same thing, right? Dot overlay, and then we got background color blue, color white, padding 30 pixels, something like that, right? Actually, yeah. Right. So now, because we want to play with the positioning, I'm going to focus on the right hand side of the screen. So I would like to use DevTools just to decide how the overlay will look like. So, for example, how do we make the overlay to show at the bottom of the parent yellow item?
First, we have to add position relative on the parent.
Okay, let's do that last. So before thinking of the parent, Alex, yes, let's focus on the item, on the overlay. What do we have to change here?
Do you want to add position?
Position, yeah,
Position absolute.
correct.
And bottom 0.
Bottom 0
And left 0.
and left 0. All right. So what happened here? That's the tricky part, right? We were expecting the element to be displayed somewhere around here, right, at the bottom of the yellow box. However, it's displayed at the bottom of the screen. Why?
Because the screen has, by default, a position relative. And the position absolute is taking as parent the screen.
Yep, that's correct. So when we said display, bottom 0 in regards to what? To the parent, to the grandparent, to the viewport, to what? What's the reference, right? Where are the boundaries? Where is the limit? Where is the border? So CSS, by definition, is trying to find the first ancestor, the first parent element, with position equal relative. And these will be the boundaries. So has the item position relative at the moment? No, correct. Has the app position relative? No. Nothing has position relative. Because nothing has position relative, CSS will say, okay, wait a minute, I don't know where to display this item because I don't know how to deal with it. I'll take bottom 0 of the screen. Right? That's why it's displayed at the very bottom of the screen. So to change that, as Alex suggested, we need to define the boundaries. So the boundaries means go to the parent element, which in this particular case is the item, right? And then change the position to relative. Just look at what happened with the blue box as soon as I changed the position of the yellow box. position relative. You see? With position relative, the overlay, now it says, okay, bottom 0. 0 out of what? Has the parent position relative? Yes, here you go. Okay, no problem. Then the parent will define the boundaries. So obviously now, if we change the height, do you think that the position of the blue box will change or not? If we change the height of the item, will the blue box move? Yes or no?
It will move with the height of the parent.
Correct, correct. Look. Right? So the blue box is driven by the yellow box. Right? So it doesn't matter how big the yellow box is. The blue box will be always displayed at the bottom. How can we make sure the blue box fits 100% of the space? We don't want to have this margin on the right. What do we have to change?
Take off the left 0.
Yeah?
And we give it a width of 100%.
With 100%. Wow. What's going on now? Why this is happening? The parent has a width. Yeah. Yeah, but that's fine, right? The parent is 200 pixels, right? So the parent is correct. The parent is 200 pixels width, that's fine. But the child is definitely not doing the trick. It's wider. And look, 260. Why 260? That's a bit strange, right? 260 and not 300. Correct. Because there is a padding. There is a padding. Remember, look at the computed. We checked that on the first workshop, right? So here we said, hey, the box is 200 pixels width because the parent has 200 pixels. That's correct. But then, like, okay, but wait a minute. We have a padding. You got the green border. 30 pixels on the left plus 30 pixels on at the right. That means that the box is clearly wider. So how can we fix that? Someone may say, get rid of the padding, right? Get rid of the padding. Yeah, it works, right? But what if I want to have a padding?
Box size, something to do with box size.
Correct.
We forget the
Correct. So whenever you have these kind of issues, that one box unexpectedly goes beyond the boundaries, this is most of the time because you set width 100%, and then that element has a padding on it, right? So there are two ways to solve that. In reality, if the element has position absolute, I think there is a slightly more elegant way to do that. So instead of doing width 100%, look, this is modern CSS. You see? So if you put left 0, it will start here. And then if you put right 0, it will end there. That's a trick of modern CSS that wasn't supported a few years ago. But now you can, right? So that will be an option to solve the problem. It works, right? Easy? Any question? The alternative, if we don't want to do that trick, if we want to respect Alex with 100%, so the alternative, as Gray was suggesting, is to do box sizing and look at how the size of the box changes depending on what I said. You see? Why? Because by default, so when we talk about the box model, if we set width 100%, like this case, it will add the padding. So it will be 100% plus the padding. And what about the border? What happens if we set a border? Let's put a border as well, just to make it more complicated. Look, you see, the border is just making the problem worse, right? So now, look at the size of the box. 200 plus 60 plus 30. You see? So now the box is probably 290 pixels width. Exactly. Right? So, in other words, by definition, when we set the dimensions of a box, we should consider the width of the box. Here you go. That's what we were expecting, right? But we should also consider the padding, and we should also consider the border. All these elements affect to the actual width of the box. So to solve that, again, we can do that. We can do box sizing. So if we select box sizing and we change it to border box, look, it clearly changes, right? It looks much better now. This is exactly what we wanted. So border box means if the width is 100%, no problem, 100%. But if there is any padding, if there is any border, right, then that will go inside of the 100%. So you make sure that the box will never go beyond 100%, right? I mean, 100% because it's the number we got here, but if we change it to 50%, it's the same thing, right? 50% means the size of the box will always be 100 pixels. If there is any padding on it, put it inside. If there is any border on it, put it inside of the 50%. Makes sense, right? I know that something you can do, because I mean that's a global issue. That's a general problem. You may have to do that hundreds of times, right, in your app. So there is a trick. You can go to your CSS and you can do that. Box sizing, border box. Right. Let me put the properties at the bottom. So we said bottom 0. Oops. Bottom 0. Position absolute width 100% or something like that, and the parent right with position relative correct, right? So you see now, even if I add a border, we already have a padding, so that proves that the theory works. But if I add a border 15 pixels solid, right? Everything happens inside of the box because of that property. So what that property means, this is like a wildcard, right? Here we said, hey, for every property, make sure that they never go beyond the boundaries of the border. Right? That's common in CSS. Any question? Right? Okay, so now let's change the example a bit. Like your overlay. Your overlay on the gallery of conflicts is not always visible, right? It's hidden, and then when you hover over, then it displays, right? So let's do the trick. I want to do that. Look, I want to put the. Let me change the sizing a bit. Yeah. So I'm going to put the overlay, not at bottom 0, but minus 200 pixels, for example, or minus 100 pixels maybe. Yeah, or minus 120 pixels. I don't know. Yeah, whatever, something like that. And then, how do we make sure that on hover over on the item, the overlay moves to the bottom? You tell me. Dot overlay colon hover, and then what?
And then set the property you want to change, so bottom to 0.
Right. So what's the problem now? I don't want to hover the overlay. Look, I want to hover the yellow box, right? Right. Look, this is fun, right? You know why, right?
Yeah.
Because when you hover, it goes to the top. That means it's not hover anymore, so it goes back, right? So that's why you get this kind of hard party mode. Cool. So what do we have to change here? Item item, and then what? Like that?
No, so item colon hover,
Item colon hover, like that?
and then delete the hover after the over.
Correct? Will this work? No. Why not? Correct, correct. Remember that if we want to attack a class name, like this one, you need to add the dot. Is there any scenario where we don't want to use the dot? Adib, correct. Remember that we can change class names, in which case we have to use the dot, but we can change, for example, tags. We can change all the divs, all the labels, right? Let's do an example. Let's do an example. So I'm going to add another label, it's Monday, right? Here you go. So, and let's add a break line just for readability purposes. Here you go. So if I want to change all the labels, you can simply put label here, right? You see? So the dot makes sense if we want to change the class name. But if we want to change all the tags with that particular name, all the labels, all the divs, all the images, right? Images are particularly important. All the headings, H1, H2, H3, whatever, you don't put the label. Sorry, you don't put the dot. You don't put the dot prefix. You just put the name of the tag and that's it. And all the labels will be affected by that rule. Cool? Okay, cool. So, right. So let's see if that works. Let me get rid of the label. Right? So now, if I hover the box, look, now it works fine. This is exactly what we wanted. However, there is still a problem. I don't want the overlay to be visible if I'm not hovering the box, right? At the moment, it's floating in the middle of nowhere. I want to hide it. So what do we have to change? To hide the overlay and then just show it whenever you are focusing the yellow box. Opacity 0. Where? Opacity 0 on the overlay. Okay. Yeah. And then what? Here. Okay, so let's try that. That's correct. That's correct, but I don't really like it. Say it again? Yes, let's do the transition. Instead of explaining why I don't like it, let's bring a real example that will prove why I don't like it. So at the moment, it's just either visible or invisible. But let's add a transition, right? We're going to slide up the overlay from the bottom. So to add a transition, it's just as simple as on the element we want to do the transition is we put transition. Transition. So then we have to pass at least three properties. First of all, which property will be affected by the transition? Opacity. And then the second property is the duration. So for how long the transition will run. For example, let's put 1 second. And finally, the type of transition. I'll come back to this attribute in a minute. But for now, let's try that. You see the problem, right? You can clearly see that the box is still visible outside of the yellow one. I don't want that. I don't want that. How do we make sure that the box is never visible beyond the boundaries of the yellow box? Overflow hidden, correct, correct. Just to make it clear, I'm going to remove the opacity issue. So now, just to make sure that it's clearly, you see? So now there is no transition in reality because there is no opacity. But, as Tom suggested, so whenever you have a parent component like the item, you can do overflow. Wait a minute, not on the overlay, on the item, on the yellow box, you can do overflow hidden. So that means that whatever goes beyond the blue box will be hidden. Look, that's perfect. That's perfect. It's never visible beyond the box. And if we want to prove our theory, look, I'm going to comment that out, overflow hidden, right? So it will be still wrong. But I'm going to add another transition. I want to play with the position, not with the opacity. So we can do that, right? Instead of moving from minus 120 pixels to 0 instantly, I want to, during 1 second, to move the box. Let's see if it works. You see? So the transition clearly works. But now, what happens if we put overflow hidden? Let's try it. Look. This is very sexy, right? Now this is exactly what we wanted, because whatever goes beyond the blue box will be hidden. So now if we have more content at the bottom, that's fine. It won't be affected at all. Right? Again, look at what happened if I remove the overflow hidden. See difference? Any question? No? Okay, cool. So we are almost done with that. Just a couple of things about animation. So Chrome has massively improved support to animations within the last couple of years. So now you can perform complex animations on a screen and they will run smoothly and all these things, right? So nice things we can do with transitions and animation. We'll learn what's the difference between a transition and an animation, but in reality, for now, both are the same, even though they are not, right? But if you have this kind of smooth effect, you can probably see, look at the bottom when you have the console, you have an animation tab. So look at what happened if I do perform animation. Look, you see, you can catch or you can repeat the animation, so you can see what's going on, right? Also, another interesting thing is you can slow down animations. So look, I can slow because sometimes we want to perform really fast animations, but for testing purposes, we want to slow them, right? Obviously, we can come here and I can change the timing from 1 second to 10 seconds, and that will work, right? Look. That's fine. However, this is a bit dodgy. Usually when you are testing, we don't do that. So the alternative, now it should be fast again, right? The alternative is, look, here you see, it's 100%, set speed to 100%, 25, 10%. So now, even though in the code we set the animation to 1 second, in reality, it will slow down, right? And the last thing is, so I said before that I'll come back to this is thing here. So this is the type of the animation. We can perform different animations in terms of how the box moves on the screen. With modern Chrome, you can do something like that. I'll show you. So if we open the overlay, if I select the type of animation, you see, I can click, look at this tiny button here. If I click on the button, look, this is really nice, right? Because this is simulating how the animation will be. So you can have different types of animation, you see? The speed, this is essentially the speed of the animation, right? So you can play around with different, look, let's try this one. So if we select one of these, you see that at the end of the day, it's transforming from the visual animation to how this gets represented, which is this a bit weird, right? But this is what it is. So look. Yeah, because it's 10%. And then it will go down, right? So this is really good for testing purposes because you can quickly iterate. So you can quickly try different strategies, right? And of course, another thing you can do, if this is not enough for you because you want to make it good to fine tune, you can do this kind of thing, right? See? So this is probably quite advanced, but that's good, right? Because Chrome is supporting that. So if we try again, it will hopefully, yeah, here you go. It would go up and then it would go down quickly. Right? So yeah, again, there are lots of things you can experiment here. Yeah. So, any question, guys? No? Okay, so that was pretty much it. Thank you for watching.